I have quite a few books to go through. Welcome back. I'm Yuri, a homeschooling, part-time working mom to 5 kids who are ages 4 to 14 years old. In our house, we love to read together. And I have quite a few books to go through that we read this past school year. So hopefully this video will help you get some ideas and suggestions on some good books to read. If you love to read books like we do, you're in the right place. On this channel, you're going to find me sharing about books and homeschooling. And it's always also been a passion of mine to do voiceovers. So you're going to find me reading some well-loved books out loud. Please help this channel out by subscribing and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out when I post a new video. That'll not only help this video reach more people, but it'll also help more people notice this channel. And also, make sure to stick around to the end because I'll be sharing with you our favorite book of the year. Here are the books that we read through the year in the order that we read them. So first, we read My Side of the Mountain. And this book is about a boy who finds that life is unhappy in New York City and decides that he is going to run away into the great outdoors of the Catskill Mountains and has to figure out how to survive on his own in the wild. The author based this book somewhat on his own experience as a child wanting to run away but had never carried out the plan. At first, I was a little skeptical about reading a book that is going to encourage running away, and that's actually the reason why the publishers had rejected this book initially. But like the publishers, I saw that everyone wants to get away into the unfamiliar. For Sam, it was moving from the city to the great outdoors. And that's exactly what a book should do, right? Take you away from the familiar to the unfamiliar. Who doesn't love a great adventure? So we had fun following along as Sam figured out how to survive in the wild. But unfortunately, for me, I found the book to be a bit dry. Although it does pick up speed more towards maybe 2/3 of the way into the book. Our kid's favorite part was Sam's dad's reaction when he found Sam. It was so chill and nonchalant. And in a way, it's kind of like when you are ready for your child to be independent and make their own choices. It's hard. It's hard to get to that point where you're okay with your kid making their own choices, but at some point it's going to happen. And sometimes it's going to take some trial and error and experiences in order for them to realize what is best for them. And that's what's happening here, it seems like, where Sam's parents seem to have come to a point where they were able to let Sam make his own choices. If you have a child that loves the great outdoors, you'll have to check this one out. And there also is a surprise ending that you would have never guessed. And this book, My Side of the Mountain, is part of a trilogy, and our kids do want me to go ahead and read the next ones. But I'm not sure if I'm quite ready for it, but in the future, I think I will try to check those out as well. And there is a 1969 version of the movie that you can rent or purchase, at least through Amazon Prime. But we ended up watching some clips from that movie on YouTube. And we decided not to rent or buy the movie because our kids were satisfied with just watching the clips and they didn't seem too interested in watching the entire movie. But the movie does seem to do a good job depicting the book from the little that we watched. Next, we listened to a read aloud called I Am Malala. We didn't read the hard copy of the book, but I had heard so much about this young lady fighting for equal rights that I just had to find out about her story. This book was poignant and incredible. To know that a young woman, especially one who is Pakistani, risked her life to fight for equal educational rights for women, especially in a culture that shuns women to altogether, totally struck a chord with me. I went to a women's college where women are encouraged to pursue higher education, and this young lady was doing just that, fighting for that exact right. It is so amazing what a brave, well-spoken young lady Malala Yousafzai is, and the fact that she survived a gunshot that miraculously missed a crucial part of her brain, and she survived it. That is a total miracle. So it is totally not surprising that she would win a Nobel Peace Prize. And she did that at the young age of 17 in 2014. I hope I didn't give away too much, but this is an incredible true story that I think everyone should learn about. Next, I have the Boxcar Children. It's about a set of 4 siblings who are orphaned, and they find a boxcar to build a home after their parents die. There are a lot of great themes covered in the series, like hard work, perseverance, and the importance of family, as these 4 orphan kids manage to live on their own in a boxcar that they created into a home, and also encounter all kinds of obstacles. I do have these hard copies, but we actually ended up listening to the audiobooks for books 1 to 6, and our kids love them. The books are great, but the audiobooks are really well done with fun voices and music. The audiobooks are really great for encouraging our kids to want to read more from the Boxcar Children series. And I would say they're good audiobooks for road trips because many different ages can enjoy these books. We also watched some of the movies that we found you could probably find on YouTube, but also you can borrow through Hoopla. And we really did enjoy those movies, but our kids would have to say that some of the details are different from the books. And they would say that the books are better, but the movies were actually really nice to give us an idea of what the characters are like. We all kind of know about Little Women, but not very many people talk about Little Men. But Louisa May Alcott also wrote a book, and it's called Little Men. And we read the Classic Starts Little Men, and it's actually an abridged version of the actual book. Our family actually enjoys abridged versions of books because usually there are pictures, more pictures scattered throughout the books. Although this one doesn't seem to have too many pictures, but it is a shorter version. This book is exciting and engaging from the get-go. We really enjoy abridged versions of books because, to me, I feel like abridged versions of books give you plenty of information and details that you really don't need to read the actual books. But if you want to know more, it's a great launching point for whomever to want to read the actual books. And it was very engaging, not only for our older kids, 14 years old, 11 and 9 years old, but even our 4-year-old and 6-year-old were getting into it. It starts with a 12-year-old boy who is newly orphaned and ends up in a school for boys. It's a fun read because it's basically a continuation of Little Women. And guess who runs the school for boys? None other than Jo and her husband. And of course, with a bunch of boys together, you're going to find some mischief and a bunch of wild boys running around. This is a sweet book about friendship and growth. Our kids were begging me to keep reading it and finishing it. And even my husband was getting into this book, and he ended up taking the book after we had finished it and read the book on his own. There's also a 1998 movie adaptation right on YouTube for free, and it does a great job making this book come to life. It's wholesome and sweet, just like you would want a book to be. And it is great for any age. Next, we read an abridged version of Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. We were captivated by this story. The kids didn't want me to put it down. It's amazing what a transformed man Jean Valjean is as an ex-convict. You can see Jean's character through his actions. From the very beginning of the story, he steals bread in order to help and save a family. He was doing this not out of selfish ambition, not out of wanting to make himself known. He was wanting to help someone else. While he has a heart of gold, he is accused and seen as a convict. And eventually, Jean seems to believe this lie himself. It's a beautiful story because one act of kindness leads Jean Valjean to repentance and to a life worthy of God. This book made me think of how our kindness can lead someone to repentance and redemption. While we really enjoyed reading this abridged adaptation of Les Miserables, there were some details that seem to have been missed and obviously cannot be put in such a thin adaptation of the book. So we were left curious about some of the details, like why Marius is considered Jean's enemy. So this book did have us wanting to try the actual novel, but I'm glad we read this version because the actual novel by Victor Hugo is over 1,500 pages long, and the pages are super thin and the words are super small. There is a movie on YouTube that was put out in 1978, and we found it to be really good. It's not a musical. Normally when people think of Les Miserables, they think of it as a musical. So our kids did get a little bored of the movie because it does have more of the older style, but it does a really great job depicting the plot. There is some violence and blood throughout the movie, so if your child isn't ready for that sort of thing, you might want to skip that movie. There is a cartoon version on Bedtime Story on YouTube that does a good job introducing the beginning of the plot. Our kids, especially our little ones, enjoyed that one. We also watched some of the clips from the 2012 musical film that starred Hugh Jackman and Anne Hathaway, and that is just phenomenal. And how could it not be phenomenal when you have Hugh Jackman and Anne Hathaway? Next, we read Daniel Defoe's novel, Robinson Crusoe. And we read the abridged version through the Illustrated Classics, and it was so much fun. Our 11-year-old son had requested this one for me to read, and the kids would not let me put it down. Everyone will love the plot of Robinson Crusoe. It's riveting and makes you question and wonder, what is life like to be stranded alone on an island and have to survive all alone? Robinson Crusoe had to learn how to survive on his own with no one to turn to. However, there are encounters with cannibals, so your younger listeners may not quite understand, but it may spark some discussion for your older listeners who have never heard of cannibalism. There are two versions of the movie that I found on YouTube, a 1994 and a 1972 one, and they're quite boring, so we watched a little bit of them. They're about an hour and a half each, but we didn't really get through them. However, we found a version, an animated version from 1988 on Classic Animated Stories on YouTube. That was a perfect alternative for our kids. And if you're interested in any of the resources that I share here in this video, and if I haven't shared them in the description box below, definitely reach out to me in the comments and I'll make sure to get back to you with that. We then next read The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. And this is a fun, whimsical story, and it gave us the vibe of Alice in Wonderland and A Pilgrim's Progress. And it also reminded me of Chronicles of Narnia and also The Little Prince. The main character, Milo, finds that life is dull and seems depressed until he stumbles upon a toll booth that takes him to a fantastical world where he meets some not so boring characters and then partners with a couple of them in order to save two princesses. And he discovers that maybe life isn't so dull after all. We actually thought that the book was pretty cute and clever in how words are used and how one perceives something makes a big deal. For instance, in Digitopolis, the tallest short person and the shortest tall person is the same person. And in Digitopolis, the more you eat, the hungrier you are. And by not eating the subtraction soup, the fuller you are. But unfortunately, some of our children have voiced that this isn't their favorite kind of story. It was just a little too fantastical for us. However, we did like it better than Alice in Wonderland, which we honestly don't feel like has much of a significant plot. But overall, this book was just a little too fantastical for our family's taste. However, we did enjoy the fun pun on words and numbers. We did watch a 1970 animated version of the novel on Amazon Prime that you can rent or purchase, but we didn't really enjoy it very much, unfortunately. At the same time, our family seems to not really enjoy these like too fantastical kind of stories. I mean, we do enjoy books like Chronicles of Narnia, and we did appreciate Pilgrim's Progress, and I loved The Little Prince, but unfortunately, we didn't enjoy this one as much. Next, we read Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls. And this book was actually my husband's all-time favorite classic as a child. And he actually wanted to read this book out loud to the kids himself, but I had never read this book myself, so I was determined to read it to the kids. Every chapter is captivating as we flash back to Billy's childhood as a 10-year-old who is determined to buy some hound dogs. And because his family was too poor to be able to purchase any dogs, he was determined. He had persevered in earning his own money for 2 long years in order to purchase not 1, but 2 hound dogs. And this book is about that scenario, that plot, that story, and also the adventures that go along with it. This book teaches a lot of great life lessons like sacrifice, loyalty, friendship, genuine unconditional love, hard work, determination, and trust. It also brings up big topics like pride. So we were able to go into a deep dive discussion as a family on the topic of pride. And the book does get into some details on death. So if you have some sensitive listeners, you may want to hold off on this book until they're a little more ready for it, or skip those parts, or read those sections in a more kid-friendly manner, or at least prep the family ahead of time. And I usually don't get really emotional about a book, but this book had me in tears, especially towards the end of the book, and I had to stop reading for a bit because I didn't want the kids to see me choking up too much, and honestly, I couldn't get any words out. There is a 1974 adaptation of this book on YouTube that we watched, and the kids were able to compare and contrast and notice that there are some differences, but as long as you can figure out what the differences are, then it's not a big deal. But we felt like the movie was very well done and worth watching. There's also a 2003 adaptation on Amazon Prime that you could rent or buy. If you made it this far, I want to thank you so much. This one does seem to feel like a little bit of a longer one because I can tell that I'm starting to lose my voice. Next, we delved into Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, and it's another abridged version of the classic. And this one is through the Treasury of Illustrated Classics. And I don't have it here to show you because we had actually borrowed that one from the library. But our family, we could not put it down. I've always been curious about this story, and finally am getting into it late into my adult years. It's the ultimate love story about an orphan girl who has a very, very rough upbringing and then ends up as a governess and secretly falls in love with the owner of the manor she is working as a governess in. I have to wonder if there is such a love in today's world. It is a powerful, powerful love story, and I have to wonder if there is such a love in today's world. It is riveting and powerful. And it's just an abridged version, so now I'm curious what the unabridged version is like. And I wasn't so sure if our 11-year-old son would enjoy this book, but he actually really enjoyed it and followed along and was really getting into it. So we watched the 1996 version of the movie we found on Amazon Prime because it was rated PG. And it is really well done. The 1996 version had exceptional acting and we enjoyed it very much. There's also a 1983 version as well. but it was for 14 years old and up. And there's also a 1971 version, which is appropriate for 13-year-olds and up. And all of these versions can be found on Amazon Prime for free. Next, we got into Amos Fortune, Free Man by Elizabeth Yates. And it's a true story, based on a true story, of a son who's named Atmun, of a king from a tribe in southern Africa, who is ripped away from his royal roots and from his freedom at the age of 15, as he is sold at an auction in Massachusetts. This is a great read anyway, but especially if you're learning about the slave trade in Africa. The slave traders rip Atmun and his tribe from everything that they have ever known. Pretty much everyone forgets that Atmun is even royal. In this book, we learned about loyalty, compassion, faith, and hard work. And Atmun doesn't gain his freedom through some unfortunate events until he's 60 years old. And although he is a king in Africa, he becomes a respectable Christian man in his hometown. You learn about this compassionate man who rather chooses to help slaves by paying for their freedom rather than saving up to buy his own land. It has a great plot, but at times I did feel like the flow of the reading was a little bit hard to follow, but overall is definitely recommended. And unfortunately, we couldn't find any movie adaptations of Amos Fortune, but someone should definitely take it on. Next, we read Johnny Tremain by Esther Forbes. And this one is about a 14-year-old boy named Johnny Tremain who lives during the American Revolution and is apprenticed to be a blacksmith in colonial Massachusetts. Although Johnny himself is a fictitious character, we get to meet several historical figures that are prominent along the way. So Johnny faces a catastrophic event that leads to him not being able to pursue his goals of becoming a blacksmith. The book covers some big events like the Boston Tea Party and obviously the American Revolution, and you get to meet a lot of true historical figures like John Hancock and Sam Adams. We thought that the plot was great, but it did get to be a little bit of a slower read as we got into the middle of the book. And so about 2/3 of the way into the book, we got pretty bored. There are tons of challenging vocabulary words that we had to stop and look up, which slowed us down and made the plot hard to follow along. I was kind of surprised that this book is a 5.5 reading level, grade level, because in my 40 plus years of life, there's so many vocabulary words, so many words that I had never come across. We would recommend this book because Johnny Tremain gives you a general idea of what it was like and what it felt like to live during the American Revolution, but we will not be reading this one again. And there is a 1957 adaptation that you could rent or purchase, at least through Amazon Prime. But we ended up just watching some of the clips on YouTube, and that gave our family a good idea of what the movie and what the story kind of felt like and what the plot was like. Our kids weren't very interested in watching the entire movie. Next, we read Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and it's another abridged version, and this one is by Stepping Stones Classics. And I don't have this one here to show you as well because we did borrow that one from the library. And while we enjoy this quick and easy to follow read of Charles Dickens' classic novel, we found that the plot is pretty twisted and psychotic. So the main character, Pip, this little boy, is pretty much he's paid to play with a girl named Estella. And we were pretty surprised to find that the story is surrounded by a one-sided infatuation of Pip for Estella. And sadly, Estella never seems to return that love and was pretty much raised to break men's hearts. And so this one felt like has some pretty mature themes, so maybe not very much recommended for children under age 10 because the themes are a bit more mature and may be harder to understand for a younger mind. So some of the themes involve a one-sided love, infatuation, and revenge. So the character Mrs. Havisham, is the one who pays Pip to play with Estella. And pretty much her reasoning for having Pip play with Estella is to take revenge on the entire male population. So the story, I don't want to give it away too much, but if you haven't read it, I mean, it's basically about Miss Havisham, who was jilted at the altar. And she is still, throughout the entire story, she is wearing her wedding gown. So she is jilted at the wedding altar and has never gotten over it. And it's pretty sad that Estella is pretty much used to take revenge on the entire male population. And even sadder and scarier is that people can be pretty twisted and messed up and play mind games like that. So it was pretty hard to find an appropriate adaptation of the movie, but there is a 1998 version with Gwyneth Paltrow as the lead actress. And that one was rated R, so we just kind of skipped that one. But we did find a free black and white version on Amazon Prime and YouTube, and that one was from 1946, which we thought was pretty well done, although it did get pretty boring, and we had to pretty much speed midway through the movie. The next one we read was The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his French last name accurately, but his last name is Leroux. So Leroux. Yeah, maybe you can help me out here. Maybe you could comment down below and let me know if that's right or wrong. Well, this is another abridged version of the novel, and it's by the Calico Illustrated Classics. And it's probably another one that isn't really intended for a younger reader. But I was very intrigued and curious about the plot, since I grew up loving Broadway musicals, but growing up in Mississippi, there were never musicals, or at least that I know of, that would come through our state. So I pretty much memorized all the music from this musical, but I had no idea what the story was actually about. So it was a bit shocking to learn the actual plots for the songs, for the music. And now I have second thoughts on the lyrics that I was so proud to sing. And I was pretty appalled by how controlled Christine, the protagonist, was by the Phantom. She pretty much had no choice and even had to pretend to like the Phantom, but ultimately showed kindness and love towards the Phantom when no one ever showed love to the Phantom, not even his mother. But Christine showed him love and kindness. Although I have to wonder if that love and kindness was more because of fear. But you also end up kind of feeling bad. You start feeling sorry for the Phantom because he comes with a lot of psychological trauma and baggage because of all that he's gone through, because no one showed him love. But then at the same time, you hate him because of how he controls people. There is a 2005 version on Amazon Prime that you can rent or purchase. There's also a 1925 silent version that's black and white that we found also on Amazon Prime. And we also found a theatrical production on YouTube through a channel called Beacon Players. We didn't end up watching any of the movies or the musical productions because I wasn't quite sure if our kids would be able to handle the intensity of it. But we did watch some of the videos for the well-known music. And of course, if you're interested in any of the suggestions, please comment down below. Okay, I'm down to our last book, and it's another twisted one. And it is Frankinstein by Mary Shelley. And it's another abridged version, and this one is by Classic Starts. It's kind of funny how we ended up ending the school year with a lot of dark reads. This book was pretty disturbing. The kids were like, why would Frankenstein create a monster without thinking about the consequences? I actually had never read Frankenstein growing up, so I thought that Frankenstein was the actual monster, but instead, Frankenstein is the scientist who took different body parts and put them together and created a monster. And basically, Frankenstein is pretty bitter that Frankenstein would even create him. He says statements like, "I am all alone in this world. If my creator despises me, how can I expect anyone else to feel differently?" And then out of revenge, Frankenstein's monster pretty much kills everyone that meant anything to Frankenstein and admits that I am malicious because I am miserable. So I found and watched a 1974 adaptation of this movie that's in black and white on YouTube, and I ended up watching it on my own, and I did find that I don't know if the kids will be ready. They might be a little disturbed by it. So we didn't watch the movie because, there's a lot of music, of course that helps to dramatize and create that suspense. And I'm not sure if some of our kids are ready for that. If you have read any of these books that were mentioned in this video, please share your thoughts about them. And if there are any books that you would highly recommend, share those as well. I'm always open to exploring more books. Have you guessed or figured out which book was our favorite for the year? We had so much fun reading pretty much all of these books, but we would have to say our favorite book of the year is a toss-up between Les Miserables and Where the Red Fern Grows. However, we're going to go with Where the Red Fern Grows because Les Mis was an abridged version and Where the Red Fern Grows was the actual novel. And we had so many great deep dive discussions as a family while reading this book. Are there any books that have changed your worldview? Please share that. I would love to hear. If this video was helpful or even entertaining at all, please give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to keep the channel going. Thank you so much for your time and hope to see you soon.